All right, welcome everybody to the session of the Florida Housing Coalition Conference. And this one is focused on Florida's green building is certifiable. So we have three distinguished panelists with us today. We have Barry Fast, President of the Board for Florida Green Building Coalition. We have Brianne Hefner with Southport, and we have Drew Smith with Two Trails. So we're going to try to cover from beginning to end what green certifying and what green building is all about. And with that, I will turn it over to Barry to kick us off.
Great, thank you very much, Mike. And thanks to Florida Housing Coalition to include us here this year. Happy to be here and looking forward to sharing some information. Just going to start out with a little bit of overview for what the Florida Green Building Coalition is all about. You know, basically, we're one of the three standards that the state of Florida accepts for its own buildings and universities, and we're the only one that's Florida specific. On this first slide here, you know, if you're going to be going through here, we have 20 slides we're going to be going through. These things are going to be going through pretty quickly, and at the end of the day, this information will be available on our website, floridagreenbuilding.org, as well as at our virtual expo booth here at the event for Florida Green Building Coalition. So when we talk about green building, basically what we're looking for is something that's going to have a lower footprint. So we're trying to think in terms of what materials we're utilizing, trying to have less of an impact on the environment, as well as we're hopefully going to wind up with something that's going to cost less to maintain. So if we build correctly and it's more energy efficient, we're going to have a lower energy bill. If we use the right components inside there in terms of our plumbing, we're going to have lower water bills. So we're going to be efficient with our dollars as well as with the environment. Next slide. Green building, as we say here, we're trying to be efficient. And at the end there, you take a look at what we're utilizing the building, because buildings overall can have a huge impact on the environment. We're trying to minimize that. Next slide. As we're talking about the different items here, the second item is something I'd really like to focus on, because currently, as we're going through the realities of COVID across the world, and we're spending a lot more time in our small environments, we recognize the need for improved indoor air quality. So part of what we're looking for in terms of the green building is designing the ventilation systems, the HVAC systems to be healthier and be well balanced. So if we're needing to deal with the humidity, which is reality here in Florida, we're trying to focus on getting rid of that humidity so we don't generate molds and growing things that we don't want to have in the homes, and have a healthier environment. Down to the specification on the type of air filtration we want to utilize to eliminate those pollutants as the air conditioning is going through its normal paces. Second thing there I just want to mention is that we also try to make sure that those filters are located in a place where people can easily access it, because we know, especially if you have a few years on you, you may not be inclined to get up on a ladder to change a filter if it's up in the air. If it's easy to walk over and change it, chances are it gets done more frequently. And we specify MERV 8 or 10 as preferable to get a good balance between removing those pollutants as well as keeping that air flowing without a strain on the mechanisms. Next slide. Why is it important? We talked about this a little bit, but you know, basically buildings can emit a huge amount and be responsible for a huge amount of carbon dioxide in the air. And we know ourselves that it's not a wonderful thing. So as we're building things, we're creating heat islands, because where it used to be trees and shaded, that's no longer there. So we want to make up for the imprint. So we may want to try to think towards reflective materials up on the roofs, so we don't have a lot of heat generated, and also reflecting things back. And where we can, let's increase our tree canopy, especially in the low to moderate income parts of the community, because oftentimes those have been removed and not replaced. Next slide. Why certify Florida Green? What we have is, as an example, we have several different standards for high rises, commercial buildings, and homes. And just focusing on homes here for a second, we have 8 different areas that we look at in terms of certification. And within each of these areas, there are some specifics that need to be attained. So in terms of energy performance, we look in terms of how well insulation is handled there, how reflective the roof and other materials are. and things don't always have to cost a lot of money. We encourage you to use light color paints on the outside as well as on the inside, because those are going to be reflective of the heat outside, and inside it's going to reflect your light around, so you're going to require less energy for that lighting. Also, choosing the right water components, we're going to be saving on our water. And when we talk about materials, we want to think in terms of things that can off gas. So as well as choosing paints that are low VOCs or zero VOCs, that stands for volatile organic compounds. Those of us that have a few years on us remember as youngsters, when you'd have the house painted, there'd be this aroma that would linger for quite a while. Those organic compounds that are no longer with us. And that's great for us to just choose something here. It doesn't cost any extra, just make the right decisions. And Florida Green Building Coalition helps you do just that. All our standards are available on the website as well. Next slide. Benefits here, we look to have the win-win-win as always. The home buyer is going to get cleaner air to breathe, especially in affordable housing. We want them to have a lower energy and water bill at the end of the day. The builder can start doing things in a different fashion, whereas they may have been around and accustomed to doing things in a certain fashion in terms of materials. And subcontractors, we want to encourage them to go with the newer materials and technologies and take advantage of the opportunity to train the next generation of workforce in this new techniques. And because we realize that it's not only the university degrees that give you a pathway to a good life and good opportunities for the future, going to the vocational schools is also a great direction, and nothing better than going into the green energy field. Next slide. Florida, you have a choice. We're hoping that you always consider Florida Green Building Coalition and whatever you're doing. If you know some people that are doing some small things at their own personal homes, we want to encourage them to take a look at our standards. We can help guide them in terms of their choice of flooring, in terms of materials, etc. And as we're talking about this, we want to think in terms of the built environment. We focus often in terms of talking about new construction or large renovations, but we really need to recognize that there's a huge quantity of the built environment already existing. And if we find ways to upgrade and improve what's already existing, that is a major home run. So we want to think towards that as well. Next slide. Here we're talking about the couple of different standards that the state of Florida also accepts for their buildings and universities. Next slide. We talk about ourselves here. We are the largest certifier of structures in the state of Florida. Homes alone, we have over 20,000 certifications. Next slide. The map here is very interesting to look at. National standards are looking to do things across the entire United States of America. And most of the country, as you can see here from the slide, is really hot climates, warm climates. So what we're trying to do is, when you're in a cold climate that requires a lot of heat, they're going to have a lot of focus in that direction. We down here in Florida and southern United States, we have a focus on heat and humidity that we need to deal with. We need to get rid of that humidity. We need to try to create a cool environment on which people can be comfortable. Next slide. The Florida Green Building Coalition standards are recognized, as we said before, by the Florida Legislature, as well as the Florida League of Cities and Association of Counties and League of Mayors, and for the FHBA, the Home Builders Association. So we'd like to be recognized as a resource for anybody out there that's looking to go green. We'd like to be able to help you out. You can go to our website, floridagreenbuildingcoalition.org. And next slide. As we said before, we have a bunch of different standards for homes, land developments, local government standards for them to do the right thing, as well as commercial properties and high rises. Next slide's coming through. We'll go through just a couple snapshots of different projects. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next. When we go through the process in each of those different areas we talked about, we have a checklist, which is available to everybody online. And in each of these categories, we take a look at specific items that can give you points towards your certification. And there's a little area on there that you can click that gives you more specifics on what's required to get that point. So in terms of the paints, it'll tell you what you need to do in the way of the paint selection. If you're looking to replace your toilets, it'll show you there that, you know, what options you have for your choice of toilets in terms of the amount of water they use. Next slide. More information, go to floridagreenbuilding.org. And thank you for, once again, including us here at the Florida Housing Coalition's annual event.
Barry, thank you very much for that. That was an incredible overview and exactly what we needed to kick off this conversation. So we're going to move now to Brianne Hefner. If she would like, I'll let her tell you a little bit more about herself and what she does, but from a developer's perspective on this, she's got the next big piece. So Brianne, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Mike. And I would like to also say thank you to the Florida Housing Coalition for having us again, and for Janita and Gladys and Mike of thinking of me when putting together this panel. It means a lot. I've told Gladys and her group, anytime I have an option to speak in front of the Florida Housing Coalition, sign me up, I will be there. So this is really exciting to talk about a new and exciting way that we at Southport have been building our properties lately. As most of you know, I mean, there's a lot of friendly faces out there, but my name is Brianne Hefner, and I am the Vice President of Development at Southport Financial Services. Our development company's name is Southport Development. I'm going to brag a little bit about us first, and then we'll go into why green building is so important and why we are members of the Florida Green Building Coalition. So as you can see, we have 215 properties nationwide, 20,000 units. As well as that, my big brag is that our affordable housing portfolio is 166 of those properties for 19,000 units. Next one. Our Florida portfolio, which is where my specific field is in Florida, is that we have a total of 77 properties. 9,500 of those are here. But as you can see, our affordable housing portfolio is basically everything in Florida. So that's what we're really excited about here. So the next slide here is just some pictures. Again, some propaganda to show, you know, some of the cool stuff that we do throughout the state, and that we have varying different building categories and building types. So Southport and Florida Green Building Coalition. So we joined in 2016. That was when we got our first development certified. So far, we've had 3 developments certified throughout the state. And we'll go into a deeper dive of those in a few. That means a total of 254 units. We got 1 silver, which was our latest one, yay us, 2 golds, and we currently have 6 in the pipeline that we are working on getting certified once we break ground on those. So why Florida Green Building Coalition? You guys don't get to laugh at my jokes because we're not in a live, but because Florida Housing Finance Corporation made us, that's why we joined. But in their defense, it was a great idea. So since we are long-term owners of these developments, we want to make sure that they are as environmentally friendly and as sustainable as possible, because we will own them for at least 15 years. In most cases, it's between 15 and 50 years. And like Barry mentioned, it's specific to Florida. So the other big named certifications don't take into account that Florida is very difficult to build in. It's hot, it's moist, it's humid as all get out. And so we have to be very careful with that. And that's why we picked Florida Green Building Coalition. You know, all of our buildings currently that we're owning and building, we're doing green certified items in it. Why not go the extra step to make sure that residents' electricity bills are lower, our water bills are lower, and that folks can maintain the livability of these units for longer so they can age in place. So I'm bragging again, but that's okay. So in 2019, we were honored beyond all get out that we were named the 2019 Multifamily Builder of the Year. Holy cow, that's amazing. So we did have 194 homes, units certified. That seems not very little, but really that was 2 properties, and we were very excited about that. And I couldn't have done it without our certifier, Steve. So I just did a little shout out there because there's no way we would have been able to do it on ourselves, but we're so excited for this honor and can't wait to see what else the future brings. So our first project that we ever did was Parkside Commons. It's located in Pinellas Park, Florida. It's 60 units. We barely made a gold certificate, but you know what? We were happy that we did it. And it was a great learning experience. And we also took a lot of the information that we learned from this one onto future projects, whether we got certifications or not. Next one. This one's one of my favorites. I know it seems kind of silly to say that, but I do get emotionally attached to projects. Calusa Estates. It's located in Belglade, Florida, which is one of the most impoverished areas of the state. We were able to bring 114 new construction units to Belglade, and they were gold certified. So we scored a 166. Again, Belglade is really tough, and we were able to do it. But I will tell you that we were able to lease up this development within 30 days, and we have never once had one person move out yet. So we're really excited for the sustainability of this one. Then this is one that's a little closer to home here where we're located in Tampa. Laburnum Gardens is an 81 unit elderly development located in Valrico, Florida. And this was our first silver, and to say that I did a little dance when we got those certificates would not be a lie. So as you can see on this one, we did extra green, in addition to what we normally do, barrel tile roofs and light colored paint, like Barry had mentioned earlier on the outside, etc. All 3 of these developments, of course, include Energy Star lighting, Energy Star windows, Energy Star roofing material, low VOC paint, low flow toilets, shower heads, and faucets, as well as doing, extra insulation in the walls and the attics and using Energy Star water heaters. So every time we build a development, we include these things. It's just nice that we can take it a step further to make sure that we end up getting our certification and also keeping the property as sustainable and green as possible. So I mentioned earlier, you can go to the next one, Janita, that this is the thing that I'm most excited about. So we have 6 developments in progress right now that we are seeking Florida Green certifications on it. 6 is a lot. As I mentioned, Steve's going to be very busy, who's our certifier, which we'll hear from a certifier a little bit later. But of these units, these 6, they are stretching across the state. And you can see there that 3 of them are in Bay County, which was ravaged by Hurricane Michael. So not only are we excited to bring units there, but to bring green units there is what's really exciting. As you can see, these are all new construction projects. We find that doing new construction green building is a lot more achievable than doing it in our rehabs, even though we include the same items in all of our rehabs as well. It's just we can't get into the walls as much as we did. So here's what I've learned. And to be successful in getting one of these certifications, you have to make sure that you start early. So as you could see on our previous slide, we have 6 projects that are currently somewhere in our pipeline. The second that we get initial plans, we make sure to engage a certifier. We send all of our building and civil plans to our certifier ahead of time before we turn them in for permits to make sure that we can get the maximum amount of points as we can then. Building a solid team. So like I mentioned, you have to have a certifier. You have to have an architect that's willing to play nice with everybody and take some constructive criticism when there's some building things that need to be fixed. General contractor who lets the certifier in, tells them when they're going to be doing inspections, takes lots of pictures, because pictures are key to filling out that checklist that Barry mentioned earlier as well. And then us, the developer, and really I call us the herder of the cats. So as the developer, we kind of make sure that everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing and that the lines of communication are still open, which is the next big ticket item. If your architect isn't sharing plans, or if your general contractor doesn't have a first name basis contact with your certifier, then it makes it really hard to go back after the fact. You know, drywall may be installed and covered up. You may not be able to see the insulation anymore in the walls. If you don't have your contractor keeping your certifier in the loop, it's a nightmare. Believe me, project 1, that's why we only got a gold. Project 3, that's why we got a silver. So communication is huge. And then oversight, which probably goes into the same category as communication, but it is also the developer and the general contractor's responsibility to make sure that the architect is including all of the green items you want, as well as adding things that have been suggested, and getting the easy points. I know that sounds like a duh, but the easy points are the way that you really can succeed and get the silver and higher certifications. So that's that. So those are the keys. If you can do these 4 things, you can easily be successful. So that's what I have to say about that. The last thing I really want to mention is that, and I think Drew's going to go through costs and all of that kind of thing here in a little bit, and how you really get certified. But yes, it does cost a little extra money, but it's definitely worth it. So definitely keep Florida Green Building Coalition in mind when you're doing your next development. You won't be disappointed. So thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. I think it's Drew's turn.
Again, I want to say thank you for your commitment to green building. And, you know, from the first time that that I started to get involved and started to learn a little bit about it, especially folks that develop affordable housing just said, you just can't do this in affordable housing. And today is a different story. And thanks to folks like you and folks like Drew, you know, we've dispelled that myth. And I think Drew probably will touch on that again. But again, I want to thank you for your commitment. So Drew Smith has been a friend for a long time. He can tell us anything that we want to know about certifying and sustainable construction. So Drew, I'm going to let you take it from there.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to Florida Housing Coalition for having me be part of this presentation as well. Next slide. A little bit about who we are. I'm the CEO of Two Trails Incorporated. I'm also the founding president of FGBC. So I've been doing this with Florida Green Building since 1999. Did some of the first homes that were ever certified, actually helped write the first set of standards as well. And currently now we've done well over 10,000 homes through the FGBC program, which is almost half the total homes certified. So we've definitely been busy with the program, great endorsers of the program, and it's just the program that makes the most sense for Florida. As mentioned earlier, that those the items that are focused on FGBC are some of the items that aren't focused on some of the other national programs, which makes it very appealing to work on with projects here in Florida. And a little bit about what we do. What we do is a very detailed list, and I'm going to go through it in a little. I'm going to break it down a little bit for you. So let's take the next slide. what we do as far as during the consulting phase, we like to be involved as certifiers. We like to be involved very early on in the project, preferably during the design phase, because we find that if we're involved from that point forward, we can actually make design changes and suggestions that will typically save the developer money, because there's a lot of changes that can be made that don't cost anything extra. And if you don't have to tell the architect to change something, you don't have to pay the architect to change it. So we like to be very early on in the process, if at all possible, because there's a lot of just looking at windows and looking at details and overhangs. And if we're involved in that, we can definitely affect the efficiency of a lot of the credit points by affecting the efficiency of the building with regard to just how things are designed and window placement, sizes of windows, because part of our design phase analysis is also doing energy modeling. So we're very integrated part of the design team with regard to making sure that everything is in the right place and all the correct materials are being used, and making suggestions that will positively affect the sustainability and the certification level of the project. Next slide. We also start out very early with an FGBC preliminary checklist. So our baseline checklist typically starts at the design phase. We want to start checking the boxes, so to speak, of things that are already going to be done. And that checklist is a robust checklist all the way up until the time that we start doing a pre-drywall inspection. So that checklist is it's ever changing. If the developer wants to make changes to it, the builder wants to make changes, we can adjust that checklist as we move through the process and try to value engineer the project as much as possible. As you know, we start doing projects like this, we don't want the green or the sustainability side to start costing the developer additional dollars. And so we're always looking at ways to value engineer as much as we can and still get a high level score. We come from a background of a lot of construction related folks. I'm still a licensed general contractor and have been since '83. So the construction industry is not new to us. It's not new to me. And we're able to talk to construction language. We're able to work with the team to possibly look at different materials and different methods of construction that might also save dollars going down through the process. Next slide. Part of our process is also handling all the documentation during the certification process, all through construction. So we're the information gatherers, as Brianna said. We take all the pictures, we do the pre-drywall inspection, we do a final inspection. We come out during, in between inspections if necessary, to meet with certain trades and with the contractors if there's questions or how do we do this better, and we try to be that source for anything green, anything sustainable, anything that's going to possibly help enhance the project's sustainable efforts. Next slide. As I mentioned, pre-drywall inspection, final inspection. We're out there. We typically are inspecting the entire building, every unit, if it's multifamily, depending on the type of multifamily. In some cases, we do pre-drywall testing as well. So there's many times where we'll actually test the pressurization of the ductwork to make sure that the ductwork is sealed properly at the pre-drywall stage so that we don't have any surprises at final inspection where we find that we have duct leakage issues somewhere. So that's all part of our process as well. And then during final inspections, that also requires, in many cases, a blower door test or envelope leakage testing on the building, which is also part of what we do. We're also energy raters, so that helps that whole process along. Every one of our units are typically tested for a HERS index. So we're adding that additional benefit to to the units by doing the blower door and the duct blaster testing at final. Next slide. Next slide, please.
Did we lose Janita?
There we go. Next slide. Filing all the required paperwork for FGBC is another monumental task. Sometimes we joke around and call ourselves professional paper pushers. As the documentation has to be done in an orderly fashion and turned in so that it for ease of review and certification. So we are doing all the documentation from the field, assembling all the documentation as required, putting files, electronic files together, and then filing the paperwork for that project and turning it into FGBC for their final review and issuance of the certification. So we're start to finish, handle all of that documentation, and any questions that might come up during the review process, we handle those as well and make sure that the project achieves its goal or better. We're overachievers. We always try to push the certification level as high as possible. So we're also looking for those little widgets in between during the process to possibly add additional low cost or freebie points, so to speak, that we can throughout the process. Next slide. Why were Florida Green building programs created? Well, a lot of things that Barry had already mentioned, so I don't want to belabor the issue, but it defines green. It also prevents greenwashing, which we've had quite a few issues over the years of people just because you put low flow toilets in and put some higher grade of insulation in, it doesn't really mean that the project is green. It just that it has a couple of sustainable features in it or energy efficient features. Greenwashing is really something that the program pretty much ends or puts a third party seal of approval on to let folks know, let the public know, let the buyers know and understand that this project really is truly a green project and has gone through a third-party certification to review all of the documentation and the construction to make sure that it really does comply with some type of program. Next slide. As Barry had mentioned, Florida Green Building is a very specific, Florida-specific program. It's one of the oldest, most comprehensive programs in the state. It actually was the first program that was introduced into the state for green, and still seems as holding the most amount of certifications of any program in Florida for green. Next slide. And the positive part now is it's now part of the MLS. So we've been finding that that's been a very large interest growing area for most people that are now going green. It actually now can add additional value to the project. It should increase in appraisal values. We're seeing anywhere from 2% to 15% appraisal value increases by having a green certification on your project. The MLS now has an entire green section where all of the certification points can be put in, as well as all of the features that are in the project as far as the green certification levels. So it does make a real impact, and as we continue to educate the appraisers across the state, that impact should continue to increase as far as the percentage appraisal values. Next slide. Also, most of our projects with the confirmed HERS index, again, another value add to the projects. It allows the the additional value, as well as what I like to call the miles per gallon for a house on the energy efficiency rating for the house. So the HERS index, the home energy rating index, really gives you how that house scores or unit scores in comparison to other units or code base. So we've been real happy with how that has added additional value, and there's some of the examples of what goes into a HERS index and how the HERS index is calculated. Not only are you doing those items, but the blower door test, envelope leakage test, and the duct leakage test also contribute to the HERS index. Next slide. And it's just a little bit more about the HERS index and ResNet. And there again, if you go to the resnet.us site, that will also give you a lot more information on how a HERS index is calculated and how its value is added to the project. Next slide. We just talked about the miles per gallon, so to speak, for a house. This is just one example of a HERS index of 64. Typically now HERS indexes have come down even from this last publication of this particular slide to where we're seeing HERS indexes anywhere from the mid 40s to typically mid to upper 50s is pretty much the norm now for a HERS index. Next slide. And that's pretty much all the information I've got. There's a little information on us. If anyone would like to get in contact with us, feel free. Our website is www.twotrails.com. And thank you all for having me be part of this presentation today.
Drew, thank you so much. And he's being modest when he says that's all the information he's got. We could be here for the rest of the day if he really meant that. So we've got a little bit of time for some questions and some additional comments. Mary, I'm going to start with you on this one, and Drew touched on this as well. Why is third-party certification so important, and what difference does it make?
Well, it makes a huge difference. And Drew, I'm glad you talked about the greenwashing issue there, you know, because people call themselves green. Yeah. So as time goes by, people are recognizing really what is or isn't the reality. And it's important because anybody that's certified a property, I'm a certifying agent as well. And when you go through the process there, even though it's on the plan and the conversations have been had and take a look, you know, the end result is not always what was listed there on the plan. That's why we have things called as-built. You know, the plan was one thing, but the way the end result looks a little differently. And simple things, just like, you know, we have points for trying to make sure that all the ductwork is sealed with mastic. And there's a repetitive process. If you wind up assembling a team, like Brianna's done, you know, so you have, and I'm sure Drew as well, if you have the same subcontractors and contractors you're dealing with on an ongoing basis, life is a whole lot easier because they've already been trained and have an understanding of what's expected. But if there's a new group of people that are involved, there's a ramp up period of time till that happens. So having an extra set of eyeballs there that's only focused on that. It's not the other inspectors coming from the cities to look at the plumbing or look how, you know, to give the okay to moving forward to put up the drywall or whatever it might be. Somebody specifically taking a look at these features to recognize and document if you've done the right thing, and because all these need to be submitted in order to take these points towards your certification. And it could mean the difference between getting the bronze, the silver, the gold, or platinum level certifications just by a couple points that you missed out on, or you put up the drywall and we no longer can prove what's behind there, like Brianna was talking about. So, you know, that's why it's so important.
Thank you, Barry. Brianne, question for you. What kind of feedback have you had from residents in regards to reduced utility cost, efficiency of the homes that you're providing them? Just can you give us an overview of that?
Yeah, of course. So as an affordable housing developer and owner, we rent our units at a reduced rate compared to market rate due to the subsidy that we receive and also the programs in which we participate in. In those programs, they being the state or the federal government or HUD, give us a utility allowance. So each resident is given a utility allowance, which comes every month for them to help pay their utilities. On average, you see that about $75 to $80 when you're thinking, wow, that's not very much. But every property that I've been to, all the 3 properties that I have been to after the certification here, is they are actually getting money back on their utility allowance each month. So their bills are averaging, you know, $50 or $60. So they're putting double money back in their pocket. And that's with them running air conditionings and, you know, having the TV on and things like that. So it's been a huge savings for residents, and selfishly speaking, it's been a huge savings for us as the owners as well, because of the water and sewer bills. Since we're doing all low flow, all Energy Star, all of that, we get a much more reduced water bill as well.
It's a win-win.
Win-win.
So, along those same lines, I wanted to ask you too, in your presentation, you mentioned a particular development, 100% occupancy, nobody has left. And I've got to think that a big part of that is building to a higher standard. And again, giving them a unit that's more efficient, that's healthier. Can you just touch on that for a minute?
Well, right. You know, the Florida Housing Coalition has all kinds of cool catchphrases like housing is health and housing is infrastructure and all that kind of thing. So in the city of Belle Glade, again, it's, you know, one of the most impoverished areas in the state. And we were the newest product by 20 years. Additionally, we had all of the green and the amenities and everything like that. So we had a wait list, you know, before we even were complete. Folks waited and waited and waited and moved in. And now we have a 2-year wait list because it is clean, safe, quality. And while it's affordable, we don't build to a standard of affordable housing. We want folks living in our units that believe that they could go to a market rate unit and get the same thing. Only ours is rent advantage, so they can save for the future and hopefully one day buy a home or move into a new rental or something like that. So our units are designed to be the best of the best for what we can provide.
That's great. Thank you. Drew, question for you. Can you talk with us a little bit about homeowner education? So you build the best of the best of green homes, and it's certified. But I know that homeowner education piece is still critical. Can you talk with us about that?
Sure. It really is critical, and it's actually a builder or developer gets points on the checklist for educating their homeowners or residents. So if the homeowners or residents don't understand what they're living in and that the project is actually sustainable and how it's actually working for them, there's a huge disconnect, and we find that we spend a lot of time working with our clients to make sure that they have the right piece of education for their homeowners or buyers, residents. So they understand that they're using low flow toilets and that the flush rate is not going to be quite the same as a standard toilet that they're used to. They're going to understand that they have LED light bulbs in the units and they can't replace them with just a standard incandescent bulb, and explain the reasons why. So the why is very important to all of the green features that are in the home and as well as outside. So landscaping and all of the detailing that goes into the exterior, those buyers or homeowners or residents need to understand and know that these are all there for a reason, and it's not just an arbitrary thing, and it can't be changed because these actually are making an impact. Your landscaping being Florida friendly, drought tolerant landscaping, those plants are going to use a minimal, if any, additional water other than rainfall. So those are very important. The type of paints, they're going to have to understand that you can't just go in and repaint a unit, and with any paint that you buy in any store, you've got to use a low VOC or a no VOC paint, and all of the all of the items that are in their house, it's literally, we develop and we have an entire walkthrough type of educational brochure that we give to our clients, to give to their residents, to make sure that they do understand all of the items that might impact them, that we've taken points for on the checklists and taking credit for, and to achieve those scores, that they get maintained and they understand why it's that way. So that it's important to have buy-in. All of the residents need to have to accept it and be part of it and embrace it. And that's how we can continue to grow these type of programs and keep adding additional market share to the Florida residency, by just having homeowners that are in those units just embracing what we're doing. And when they move out, they're going to then look for another house or another apartment that's going to have similar characteristics, similar certification. And that's how the whole process continues to grow, and how we can change Florida one unit at a time.
That's a great way to put it. I know everybody that's participating here has brought the general public a long way from this. May not have been on their radar 10 years ago. Today, it's totally different. So, and that's due to the effort of folks like you that are out there every day. Very quick question for you. So looking at what we should be thinking about if we're updating an existing structure, where do you go first and where do you focus your attention?
Well, if you're updating a existing structure, and thanks for the question, and thanks for all the comments from Drew and Brianne. You know, congratulations on all your successes out there. You know, we're all in this together, and you know, it's wonderful to have great partners like you all are and have been, as well as Mike there for us. Yeah, as you're looking at the existing structure, once again, you want to have the same mindset that we want to take a look at what can we do and take advantage of the things that are certainly no cost, and work our way up for low cost until we consider other things as well. So currently, you know, solar panels, solar PV is very desirable, and it's got a lot of press out there and a lot of advertising going on out there. But if you're upgrading an existing structure, it may not be your best bang for the buck, you know, because we know as we're building these houses, we're looking for improved installations, you know, lower impact in terms of the heat loads on the structures and things like that. So we may find that the solar panel would produce a certain amount of energy, but by spending half as much on insulation and sealing the envelope and, you know, taking a look at where we may have leakages in the house, you know, some of the testing that Drew does there, we can use to try to identify if there is leakage to the outdoors and try to find ways to seal those things up. Things up in the attic space like radiant barriers could be another thing that's used to try to, you know, reflect that heat out instead of allowing it to come into the house. And it depends on how much redoing you're looking to do and what sort of budget you may have. But choosing paints, if your current house is a dark color on the outside with no trees, and, you know, we have a lot of, you know, dark areas within the house, you know, maybe there's a solar tube that can bring some exterior lighting into a dark part of the house so you can get lighting inside without having to turn on the light switch. The previous house I lived in had just one darkened area, and I put a solar tube in there. It was a house built in the 50s. And so during the day, I had enough daylight between that one solar tube in the kitchen area that was darkened with one little window and the lighting I had facing from the north and south areas coming in. Not a single light switch on, total daylight. It was wonderful. So lots of things can be done. And we want to think in terms of, you know, being comfortable. You know, if we have an area that we can shade, maybe it takes a while for the tree to grow up, but maybe there's some other way that we can incorporate some sort of shading material that would eliminate the heat load on the house on the east side, or especially on the western side, to capture that. Or Drew was talking about earlier in terms of the selection of windows, something that would lower the amount of heat gain through those windows if they're going to have a lot of exposure to the light coming in. There's ways to get the light energy in and keep the heat out. So all these things come into play. And it's important to try to get the right information with the right advisor to help make those decisions. And that's all what we're trying to be. Every one of us is looking to be a resource to help people make those right decisions at whatever level of pocketbook you may or may not have.
Very good. Thank you. Brianne, I'm going to come back to you for just a minute. And we are running close on our time, but we're doing well. You mentioned something that's very important, close to me up here in the Panhandle. And as I ask you this question, I'm going to go ahead and share that our state agency, DEO, is requiring green building certification on all new construction. We don't know how many that's going to be yet, but that's going to apply to Irma and as we move into Michael impacted areas. So that was a huge commitment. Now, Brianna, you mentioned that you've got 3 projects over in the Panhandle. I don't know how many people have been there, have seen what the Panhandle looked like after Michael came through. I grew up going over to Mexico Beach and Cape San Blas and Panama City. And boy, it was painful to say the least. So Brianna, could you tell us just a little bit about what you've seen and the commitment that you've made in Bay County and others?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to spring break like every college student in the Panhandle, so I knew what the before looked like. We also have another deal that's in Panama City, rehab that we bought a couple years ago. So we went up last year, the exact year anniversary from Hurricane Michael, and I was devastated. Even a year after a hurricane ravaged the area, I didn't expect to see it still so ravaged. So many blue tarps, so many half houses, so many half stores, trees down everywhere, everyone living in RVs. It was really, really just disheartening. And so as a commitment from Southport Development, what we did is we went up and we were able to find 2 bigger sites. We had applied for a smaller one in a previous RFA, which is 38 units. The Bridge Plaza development is 102. Arbors is 136. So we have, just about 300 units coming into Bay County that'll be online sometime at the end of 2021, beginning of 2022. And with that too, we wanted to make sure that those developments additionally, in addition to being green certified, but also hurricane sustainable. So everything is construction, concrete construction with reinforced walls. The roofs will be attached with the straps and everything like that. So it's just for us, in order to maintain the housing there for as long as possible, in case a storm ever comes through, the green building just adds on to the benefit, and my hurricane preparedness building plan, also helps me with the extra little points that I need to get, silver and beyond, because that's my goal now. So really it's a commitment to the community to bring housing, but also make sure that housing is there for the next 50, 60, 100 years.
Thank you for those comments. So as we're wrapping up, before I make some final comments, does anybody else have anything that they would like to add? Barry, I think you wanted to mention something as we were wrapping up.
Yeah, actually, I just want to encourage everybody to, take a look at Florida Green Building as a resource. As we've said in the past, take a look at our website, floridagreenbuilding.org. You reach out to any of our certifying agent or our builders that are out there. It's very heartwarming to see that the builders and appraisers are starting to recognize that the values are going to be able to be captured. We have a new committee that's focused on the real estate and appraisal community to try to avoid that disconnect. So we start including all these added features, because oftentimes the developers and builders were dealing with these things and they were looking upon it as an added expense. And, Drew and Brianna, you guys definitely have the right mindset, because you understand that everything that you're putting in there, there's a cost, but there's an incremental value associated with that cost. So it's cost plus in terms of the valuation that's gained there. So it's something we want to encourage everybody to understand. And I want to thank, everybody here on the panel, Florida Housing Coalition, to including us this year. And we're looking forward to a great association together as we move through to different projects and try to make this an even better state of Florida.
Thank you. Drew, any final comments or final thoughts?
No, I want to thank the panel again. It was, I think, pretty informative, and you know, just from our perspective, we're always here. So, you know, as being the oldest certifying agent in the state, I get that privilege to, you know, just be a reach out. We're a source for information. Whether or not you're our client, we still are very interested in being able to help answer any questions. We've got the wisdom and knowledge out there, and I'm really happy with the Florida Housing Coalition being able to have this program as their mainstay program for green certifications, and we'll help any way we can. Thank you again, Mike.
Thank you, Drew. And Drew and Two Trails, to say that they are a fixture in Florida in the green building world is an understatement. Thank you for everything that you do. Brianne, I know you've got to have at least one thought that you want to add.
You know me. All I was going to recommend to Gladys and Janita is next time I'm going to need some piped in laughter to really make my jokes hit. You know how the Yankees are you know, piping in the fan noise for the baseball games. As much as I love these Zoom meetings because we can do it from our homes, my jokes aren't as funny when people don't laugh at them. So thanks for having me, and have me back whenever you need me.
We all laugh.
Brianne, you're very entertaining. Thank you. I've been laughing all along.
Good.
Yeah. Hey, Mike.
So with that, I want to thank the Housing Coalition. I want to thank all of our panelists. You know, this kind of a conversation can't happen without folks like you. I want to thank Gladys for helping me with my technological challenges this week, among other things. So she's always there, as is everybody else with the Housing Coalition. And Janita, you haven't moved a bit since we started this meeting. I don't know how you did that, but you have been still the whole meeting. And I want to thank everybody else that's taken time to watch this and to let us share some thoughts on green building.
Hey,
With
Mike,
that,
can I do one last thing here?
Yes, sure.
I would just like to add one last thing here. Commercial with for Florida Green Building Coalition. I know we're talking about the organization and what we do and all, but everybody that's listening in, I want to encourage you to go to our website and become a member. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have your participation. And as we develop our standards, we have meetings on an ongoing basis. So we're always looking to upgrade our standards beyond what's required by the building code. And that's being done with the builders, the developers, the people with the building science knowledge, as well as the environmental community, to try to come with different standards that are doable, sustainable, affordable. And we'd love to have your input and be a part of what we got going. Stay on the cutting edge. We're looking to include things as they come on the radar, even before it gets included in our typical standards. If you identify something that's useful and beneficial, you can submit for supplemental points for those things, and eventually they may even become part of our standards. So please come join us.
Thank you, Barry, and thanks everyone else.